generations to come.
Welcome to another edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the TDN, and I also co-host the Down the Stretch radio show with Dave Johnson on SiriusXM Radio.
And how are y'all doing? I'm Randy Moss with NBC Sports and the Buyer Speed Figure crew.
Zoe Cadman here with First Racing and First TV. So glad to be home. I left Baltimore Airport at 5:30 this morning. I believe I'm running on fumes. I am drinking water, just in case Bill was wondering. All is good.
I don't know. It looks like vodka to me. So
yeah. Oh, that would be fun.
Right. Okay. Well, guys, post Preakness, plenty to talk about. A very good race, an interesting race. Obviously, the story is journalism winning, overcoming trouble, and then, of course, the brouhaha afterwards with the jockeys, which we'll get to. But I just want to get some general feelings from Randy and Zoe. The NTRA poll came out today, and they have journalism at number one, which I don't agree with. I think Sovereignty should be number one because he beat him in the Derby, and we'll settle it in the Belmont. But Zoe, what do you think?
It's what have you done for me lately, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Sovereignty's in his stall up in Saratoga. Nice, cool, fresh air, a lovely time. And journalism is slugging it out on the racetrack. That's exactly what it is.
And maybe the voters are rewarding Michael McCarthy and Eclipse Thoroughbreds for coming back in 2 weeks in the Preakness, while Sovereignty decided to take a pass and wait for the Belmont Stakes. So, but yeah, I agree. I think Sovereignty should be number one, in my opinion, right now at least, in journalism, number two.
So how much does your feelings on that subject have to do with that horse not only winning, Randy, but overcoming that, terrible trouble midway through the stretch?
Well, look, he was the best horse on paper in my opinion, by a fairly solid margin going in. If he had to run against Sovereignty and Baeza in the Preakness, like perhaps he should have, would we still be talking about, journalism's win, or would it have just been a, fast closing second or third? Who knows there? But obviously he showed a tremendous amount of courage to be in the position that he was in, and then be approximately 5 lengths behind Gosger at the eighth pole, and, surging with this huge will to win, to get up anyway. Really, the only question going into the Preakness was how the 2 weeks would impact him, if at all. Okay. And in talking to opposing trainers in the Preakness Stakes who had watched journalism train at Churchill Downs, to a person, they were raving about how journalism bounced back out of the Kentucky Derby. There was no doubt in the minds of the competition that had seen him train at Churchill that journalism was going to bring his A game in the Preakness, and obviously they were right.
Yeah, he was terrific. He was absolutely terrific. He trained well all week. I watched a video of him, and I said this last week, on the track a couple of days after Derby at Churchill Downs, and just watching him do that beautiful extension and that lovely bouncy jog that he's got. He's a horse that Hissa must absolutely love, because you're not going to find a better mover, a sounder horse. And he looked exactly the same going into the Preakness as he did going into the Derby, which was huge.
So the question now becomes, does he run in the Belmont Stakes? The ownership group took their time. We didn't know about the Preakness actually till, I believe, right before the draw, that he was firmly committed to it. This is just a guess. I don't think he will go in the Belmont. I think that they'll, and I hope I'm wrong, I think they'll say, we've done enough in the Triple Crown Series. We don't need another one right now, and just point for Saratoga and the Haskell or something like that. Zoe?
I don't know. I was a little bit surprised that they shipped him straight to Saratoga, to be honest. But if you think about it, it does make sense, because it's probably the same distance back to Churchill as it is to Saratoga. So if you're leaving the door ajar just a little bit, is it not best just to ship him once, get him up to Saratoga? I can tell you he's going to be feeling good. 3 weeks, that fresh air is going to hit him. And we mentioned this last week, how horses can fool you. He might just be an absolute iron horse, but the temperatures in the mornings there are in the 40s. He's going to come out bucking and squealing. He's going to be wee and think everything's marvelous. And he could con everyone into running him. The fact that he's there means the door is ajar, just like it wasn't in the running of the race. He might stick his nose through it again.
Zoe, can you do that wee again?
Wee!
There you go.
Look, in the San Felipe, which was the race that really put journalism on the map, he ran a 108 Beyer speed figure. Okay. Horses typically react when they run a race that fast. Then in the Santa Anita Derby, he got in trouble and he was bounced around. And again, elbows exchanged with Juan Hernandez in the Santa Anita Derby. And he ran a tough race to get up and edge Baeza at the end, a hard fought win. Then the Kentucky Derby, which is, I thought, the ultimate stress test for 3-year-olds. And he finishes second, but he got even more of a stress test, as it turns out, in the Preakness. Now, after all that, they're going to bring him back in 3 weeks and run him again in the Belmont Stakes. I can tell you, if he was mine, I wouldn't even think about it. Right. And there's also the data points. OK. Since 2002, there have been 30 horses that have run in all 3 legs of the Triple Crown. That's excluding 2020, when, of course, COVID messed up the spacing and the order of the races and all that. OK, 30 horses. Of those 30, and this includes Triple Crown winners American Pharoah and Justify, 25 had a worse finishing position in the Belmont than they did in the Preakness. If you exclude the Kentucky Derby and just look at the Preakness and the Belmont, since 2002, 48 horses have run in both races. 41, or 85%, had a worse finish position in the Belmont than they did in the Preakness. The data is pretty conclusive that unless you are a freaking iron horse, horses typically regress in a situation like this. And after going through as stressful a series of races as journalism has gone through, personally, I wouldn't run him. But having said that, I may not have run him in the Preakness either. So what do I know?
So we have the potential, if Randy and I are wrong, but we have the potential of really good race among Sovereignty, Journalism, and Baeza. Baeza is a horse I think that a lot of people are going to like in there. And if it was a 1.5 miles, I'm sure people would like him even more so than they are now for a 1.25 mile race. But that would be one hell of an end to the Triple Crown. Sovereignty, Journalism, and Baeza, a rematch plus whoever else goes into the field. Randy, would you? I mean, it's all hypothetical at this point, but who would you pick among those 3?
It's a good question. I mean, it would be. I would assume probably Sovereignty. If journalism runs, I mean, from what I just said, my stand on him coming back and running again in the Belmont Stakes 3 weeks after the Preakness. So then it would be between Sovereignty and Baeza, and that would be a pretty tough selection. But I think I would probably give Sovereignty the advantage.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Epic. It will be just epic to watch.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, you want to talk about attendance for the Triple Crown. If all 3 of those run, the attendance is going to be through the roof.
And why didn't we have it for the Preakness, right? That's what the Triple Crown is supposed to be. I mean, just imagine what it would have been like to have all those 3 squaring off again, and the public, how the public would have responded after the Kentucky Derby.
I know I sound like a broken record about this because I talk about it all the time. And I can tell right away that Randy's going to disagree with me, but I hate it that horses don't run back in the Preakness Stakes. And I started fell in love with racing in the 70s. And that's an era where horses ran in the Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont, unless they got injured or just it was apparent that they were way in over their heads. Do you imagine John Veach telling the media after the Preakness that I don't want another crack at Affirmed because it's just too tough to run 5 times in 3 weeks? What that would have done to the 1978 Triple Crown. So, every trainer on the earth will tell you that running back in 2 weeks is hard to do. I'm sure it is. But they say that because they feel it in their bones, so to speak. So I did a little bit of investigating, and this is hardly a very scientific sample, and not necessarily something that you can really take to the bank. But I did the last 11 Preaknesses, and not excluded. The last 10, excluding 2020 because of COVID. There's been 6 winners in the Preakness that ran back in 2 weeks after the Derby out of 75 starters. There's been 4 winners of the Preakness who out of 85 starters who came back in more than 2 weeks. I also need to clarify that one of those horses that won with the 2 weeks rest was Seize the Gray, who didn't run in the Derby, who ran in the Pat Day Mile. Randy, I wouldn't have fallen in love with this sport nearly as much as I have if I was that 15-year-old kid right now who had, okay, he just won the Travers, we'll see him in the Breeders' Cup, or he ran well in the Derby, by the way, or we're going to retire him. It drives me crazy. Horses, I just don't see any reason why people are so afraid of this.
I don't know. I mean, look, horses are capable of running back in 2 weeks and running effectively. Not every horse, maybe not the majority of horses, but I mean, you look at American Pharoah, look at Justify. Although Justify, I don't think ran as well in the Preakness as he did in the Kentucky Derby. He won anyway. Look at journalism. I mean, horses are capable of doing it, but when you say horsemen feel it in their bones that, they don't want to run back in 2 weeks, my opinion, it's because the horses are telling them that they don't run as well coming back in 2 weeks. I mean, the Preakness is a classic. There's no reason for horsemen to be skipping the second leg of the Triple Crown unless they think it compromises their horse to a certain degree. As far as your stats go, I mean, I think your stats kind of point that out, but I would add that I went down a similar rabbit hole. And then I realized that the very best 3-year-olds in the country pretty much all run in the Kentucky Derby. So when you're then comparing in the Preakness horses that ran in the Derby with 3-year-olds that weren't good enough to run in the Derby, then they're automatically going to be better and they should win at a higher rate. Even if they ran back in 1 week as opposed to 2 weeks, I would still think the Derby horses would come out on the better end of that statistic. But we could go down, I mean, so many examples, but, I think people know the way Bill and I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, up until 2020, Bob Baffert had never lost the Preakness with a horse that won the Derby. And Authentic, if we're counting that, kind of put the kibosh in it because he got beat by Swiss Skydiver. And then Medina Spirit didn't win the Derby, but he did. And then he was third in the Preakness. So up until 2020, he'd never lost a Preakness with a Kentucky Derby winner. Now, that's before Hissa. That's before the advent of Hissa. Things have changed over the course of the years. And horses tend to run better off 4 to 6 weeks rest. And yes, it can be done, but let me put this way. Back in the 20s and the late teens, you didn't have to jump through all the Hissa hoops. You just didn't. And it's made a big difference and a good difference, I might add. They're there to protect the horses. That's what they're there for. And they're doing a grand job.
I'll give you a perfect example of how much times have changed. And I know people know that times have changed. And sometimes they talk about Citation having a race in between the Preakness and the Belmont as an example. There was a horse in 1959 that had finished second in the Kentucky Derby. His name was Royal Orbit. All right. I think Reggie Cornell was his trainer. Listen to this schedule. Okay. Royal Orbit was second in the Santa Anita Derby behind a filly named Silver Spoon. Okay. Then he had a little bit of a break. He came back in the Derby trial, which was Tuesday of Derby week back then. Okay. He finished third in the Derby trial. Then he runs in the Preakness and he finishes second in the Preakness to Tommy Lee. Excuse me, the Kentucky Derby. Finishes second in the Kentucky Derby to Tommy Lee. Then he runs Monday the next week, Preakness week. He runs Monday in a race called the Preakness Prep and he wins it. Then he runs in the Preakness 5 days later and he wins it. Then he runs in the Peter Pan at Belmont Stakes. And he finishes third in the Peter Pan, and then he runs in the Belmont, and he finishes third in the Belmont. 6 races in 46 days for Royal Orbit, who to me is the poster child of how horses were trained and raced then and how they are today.
Can we frame that and send it to Bill for Christmas?
Well, that's a very interesting statistic. All I can say is they don't make them like they used to, Randy.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. Keeneland September grad Charlene's Dream won the Grade 3 Gallaret Stakes at Pimlico on Preakness Day. Supplemental nominations are still open for this year's September sale. And if you're wondering why you should nominate, just listen to Donato Lani, who said that last year's sale, and I quote, was one of the strongest sales I've ever seen at Keeneland. And if we wanted a horse, it simply cost more. This year's Keeneland September sale takes place from September the 8th to September the 20th. Make plans to attend.
It all comes down to this.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
The moment that defines the year, when the world's most influential buyers gather, and every decision, every bid, every opportunity shapes the future. At a marketplace that brings the thoroughbred world together, and where futures are forged, because every moment matters. At the World's Yearling Sale, Keeneland, September.
Our fastest horse of the week this week is brought to you by Two Phils, one of the fast sires at Windstar Farm in the 2023 Kentucky Derby. Of course, Two Phils finished second to Mage. In that race, Mage earned a buyer speed figure of 107, the fastest Derby figure in the last 17 runnings of the race. But in finishing second, Two Phils ran a 105 buyer, which puts him in a lofty category himself. That 105 equals American Pharoah, Authentic, and Mind That Bird for the second fastest Derby figure in 17 years. Pretty good for Two Phils, huh? Two Phils stands at Windstar for $10,000 with his first foals arriving this spring. Now for the fastest horse plural of the week. I believe this is our first 3-way tie since we started this segment. These 3 horses each ran buyer speed figures of exactly 100. First on Friday, it was the fast improving exclaimer Awesome Aaron in the Pimlico Special. That was Awesome Aaron's first career stakes victory. Then Saturday on the Preakness undercard, Booth got his 4th straight wire-to-wire win, this time in the Maryland Sprint with Eric Asmussen riding for his father, Steve. And also Saturday at Louisville, Utah Beach made it back-to-back graded stakes scores at 1.5 miles on turf, winning the Louisville Stakes at Churchill Downs. So we have the fastest horse of the week times 3.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, one of the big controversies in this year's Preakness Stakes was the bumping involving journalism with Umberto Rispoli aboard and the Bob Baffert horse with Flavian Pratt aboard. It was one of those moments that you really had to look away for a second because you think that, could be really, really bad. Thank goodness it wasn't. Thank goodness nobody got hurt. But Zoe, you're the perfect person to ask about this. Who was at fault and what did they do wrong?
I mean, I'm not one to jump into jockey bashing or anything. If I was writing journalism, I'm going around. Because at the 3/8 pole, he wasn't traveling. For whatever reason, Umberto was already shoving on him. He was losing ground. I don't know if he didn't like the kickback, if he didn't like it down on the inside, or what the deal is. I would have gone around. If you're watching the drone shot, which was a really good way to watch it, and really the only one to get a full idea of what's going on. I actually showed a few friends of mine that were thinking that Pratt was majorly at fault. I'm like, no, watch this. Umberto had plenty of room to one go round, and I understand that he wanted to save some ground. That's fine. So he goes into a hole, and there's tons of room for the hole, but it's like driving a big car into a dead-end street. There was no way out of that hole unless he made his own way out. And given the momentum and given the horse he was on, who, trust me, I have never in my life seen a horse do what he did. He is an absolute monster. Got his head in the hole. And people seem to think that Pratt came over on the horse. I spoke to Pratt right before we came on this podcast and, kind of asked him his thoughts without going overboard. And he said that his horse was turned sideways. When you hit a horse in the ass, journalism, hit his horse goal orientated on the ass, that turns him sideways, which turns his head and his shoulders into the other horse. You saw Pratt pulling him off. He got knocked sideways. They're just so lucky that Jose Ortiz down there on the inside didn't go down. And even Umberto Rispoli said in the press conference afterwards, he just said that he was glad that everyone was okay coming out of that. I asked Pratt, did the steward speak to him? He said, no. I said, does it look like you might get dates? He said, not as far as he knows. He also said, along with me, he said, I was riding my horse. I'm not letting him through there because he stood his ground. He said, honestly, I could have beaten Sandman. That was his point of view at the time that he was going. And he got stopped by that too, because he was turned sideways. He said he's glad everyone came out of it okay. But he also said, and I quote, he said, in all my years riding, I have never, ever seen a horse do that. He was in awe of journalism and just said he was amazing to get stopped like that and do what he did. So it's all props to the horse. Umberto's very brave, stupid, I don't know what, but they got it done. And ultimately, he was the best horse in the race.
Yeah, I've never seen, never's a big word. You seldom see an industry as evenly divided as it seems to be right now between about Umberto Rispoli's ride. Was it bold? Was it daring? Was it reckless? Was it dangerous? It seems to be right down the middle, including riders. I mean, riders seem to be. To me, what I've seen so far, most riders seem to come down on the side you're taking, Zoe. And I agree with you. I will say that obviously, having never ridden a horse, at least not in a race, there's, split second judgment clearly. And when you look at the drone shot, you can see Rispoli at just inside the half-mile pole as they really got to the second turn. He steers out into about the 3 or 4 path as if he's going to go around. Right. It looked like that's what his plan was. And then he had a change of heart and ducked to the inside.
He had Jerry Bailey.
In his ear.
Go inside.
What I think is that he, like most of us, probably thought Clever Again was the main rival that he had to beat. And Clever Again is on the lead on the inside. And I think he was probably counting on Clever Again, taking him a little bit down the stretch, and then a hole opening either inside of Clever Again or maybe, a couple of spots outside him or whatever for him to slide out and go. What he wasn't counting on is Clever Again backing up into his face. Right. Which caused the problem. Now, at that point, I think he's already committed. He could have gone around. I agree. He probably should have gone around. He tried to go through a hole that wasn't there. Yeah. He tried to make a hole, forcibly make a hole. And I think we're just lucky that we didn't have a spill or a horse injury or something like that. I mean, if it's reckless and dangerous, if a horse goes down, then it's also reckless and dangerous if you manage to get through and win anyway. You can't have it both ways. So I will say, if he had taken the conservative route when he saw there was no hole and when Clever Again was backing up into his face and he had checked the horse like most riders would have, journalism doesn't win the Preakness. So he was rewarded in the end for whatever you want to call it, recklessness, whatever. And the horse, everyone can agree, was tremendous in the face of that adversity.
So I'm one of the ones who disagrees with the two of you, but I definitely respect your opinion, especially Zoe, because he's got a She's got a big advantage on us, Randy. She's been out there and knows what she's talking about. But then the one thing I think that deserves criticism is the stewards. That was the quickest inquiry in the history of horse racing. It was like the opposite of the fiasco at the Derby a few years earlier. Zoe, from what you said, the way you described it, if that's the way you saw it, and if the stewards saw it that way, should maybe journalism come down?
No, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
Randy?
Clever Again was going backwards. I don't know. Lost for words.
Yeah. Someone asked me that right after, it was Steve Kornacki, right after the running of the Preakness when we all got back to the trailer. And Steve was of the opinion, like me and you, Zoe, that it was a move that sort of crossed the line a little bit by Rispoli, and he thought that the horse should have come down. And he asked me my opinion of it. And I said, yeah, I agree with you that it was probably crossing the line, but I wouldn't have taken his number down because I don't think you could conclusively prove that it cost another horse a placing. I mean, maybe you would it have changed the outcome of the race? Journalism wins anyway. Gosker wasn't a part of it. Clever Again was going the other direction.
The only thing you could say is Pratt's horse. Yeah,
that would be the only one that you could maybe pin a DQ on and say that it might have cost him a placing. But I think that might be kind of a coin toss. So I think I would have left it alone, even though I believe that it was an iffy move.
Well, speaking of jockeys and controversy, Junior Alvarado has appealed the fine levied to him by the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission and the Churchill stewards for quote unquote overuse of the crop. The rule under HISA is you cannot hit the horse more than 6 times. If you do, there's an escalating scale for how much you'll get fined. His fine stands right now at $62,000. Has also something to do with the fact that he had a similar ruling against him at Churchill back a few months ago. Junior says that he didn't hit him 7 times. There was a couple times they misinterpreted him being aggressive, showing the horse the whip and waving in front of his face. Randy, you guys have the best equipment. You get the best views. You can probably no one can put this thing under the microscope better than the NBC crew. You think he actually hit him more than 7 times?
Well, I think 8 is what they claim that he hit him. And Junior and Terry Meeks, the head of the Jockeys Guild, came to our set on Friday, I believe it was, on NBC, in between right before we went on the air. And Junior told us about the appeal, right? He's appealing the fact that the fine is doubled from 31 to 62. He thinks that's not proper, given the rules and the progression of the rules and all that. And he also is going to appeal as well, as you said, that he hit the horse 8 times instead of flagging him or whatever. After they left and they walked off the set, I got on the talkback, which we have, and I asked our tape person if they could play for Jerry and I the isolated replay. We had an ISO camera on Sovereignty the entire length of the stretch, and we had him slow-mo it from the top of the stretch all the way to the wire. And he not only hit him 8 times, he hit him 9 times. And you don't have to be a brain surgeon to see that the horse is being hit and not flagged and not being shown the whip. I mean, Alvarado was quoted as saying that in the heat of the battle, he wasn't focused, wasn't thinking about how many times he hit him. If he hit him 9 times and he wasn't thinking about it, imagine if he had hit him 1 more and hit him 10 and triggered a disqualification. That's how close he came to being disqualified from the Kentucky Derby over a whip that probably didn't even matter.
Take the 62,000 and be glad you weren't DQ'd is what I do.
Oh, good point.
As always, the TDN Writers Room also brought to you by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association, the PHBA. It was another big weekend for Pennsylvania breds. And when the world was watching at Pimlico on Black-Eyed Susan Day, PA breds won races 5, 6, and 7 for an all Pennsylvania pick 3 worth $12,277. And then on Preakness Day, Saturday, Whitty capitalized on a hot pace and giving turf to barrel from last to first in the Jim McKay Turf Sprint. Whitty is a half-brother to Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint winner Caravel out of the great Pennsylvania broodmare ZZ Zoom Zoom, and Whitty has now won 10 of 31 lifetime starts. Congratulations to owner, breeder, trainer Elizabeth Merriman, who basically grew up at Pimlico, as well as co-owners Qatar Racing and Mark DeTample. To learn how to breed your own Pennsylvania champion, check out the 2025 Stallion and Boarding Farm Directory online at pabred.com or call 610-444-1050.
PA Bred, I think we've built a brand at this point.
It's excitement at every step.
Roses for Deborah just set a new track record.
On average, for the past decade, Pennsylvania paid over $28 million a year in Breeders' Awards, restricted races, and owner bonuses. Plus, PA Bred shine on the world's biggest stage. Just 3 states have bred more Breeders' Cup winners. Learn more at pabred.com.
On this week's edition of First Things First, I went beyond, guys. I called him, I texted him, and then I finally grabbed him in a shed row, and I finally got a hold of trainer Michael McCarthy. Okay, Mike, you're at the Timonium sale. How's it looking out here?
Looks very well.
All right. Have you had a chance to look at the replay? What are your thoughts? Has it sunk in that you've won 2 Preaknesses?
Yeah, I've had a chance to watch the replay a couple of times. Obviously, first and foremost, glad that everyone's come out of it in good order, horses and humans. Scary for a second there, but as many times as I've watched it, I still kind of have a hard time believing that we were good enough to kind of get our feet underneath us and finish up the way we did.
I think it's astonishing what he did, getting his head in there and powering home. I mean, surely you have to rewind it and watch it on slow motion, didn't you?
Yeah, all credit to journalism. Average horses don't do that. To do what he did and to be able to persevere after that, I thought was very impressive. And kudos to Umberto as well. There wouldn't have been a whole lot of riders that would have made the decision to go ahead and go through a hole like that.
That being said, how did he bounce out of it? You look like you're happy. Is he happy?
He seems like he's very good. He's been an easy read ever since he came to us in July of 24. But he's bounced out of it well. His appetite's great. His attitude's good. He seems to be enjoying the fanfare.
If you could make up your mind right now, what would it be, yay or nay for the Belmont?
Oh, you'd always want to say, yeah, you don't get the opportunity to participate in races like that, let alone Triple Crown races every year. So we'll let him kind of dictate what he's up to, how he's feeling. He's on his way up to Saratoga, so we'll give him a few easy days up there before he gets going and see what he's telling us.
Oh, that's awesome. Whose barn is he going to?
He's going to Todd Pletcher's barn.
Of course he is. One more thing. The guys, Bob and Wayne, gave you hell for shipping into the Derby winner's stall. What do you have to say now? Yeah,
they had me going there. I wasn't sure if they were teasing me or if they were telling the truth or what. So I got a little wound up there for a bit. But apparently we were 1 over from the Derby winner's stall. So I think the stalls 33 and 34 will be pretty good luck from now on. Although, unfortunately, we won't be at Pimlico next year for the Preakness. So we're going to have to find a new stall for the Derby winner next year.
All right, Mike. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Many thanks to trainer Michael McCarthy. Of course, we'll all be keeping tabs to see if journalism does indeed run in the Belmont, but he is certainly ensconced at Saratoga, Todd Pletcher's barn right now. Okay, let's carry on. Santa Anita does continue Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Join us for Memorial Weekend Carnival. We'll have 3 grade 1s on Monday. We'll have 5 stakes on Saturday as we celebrate the Calbreds. We also have a California Beer Festival. I'll be all in on that. Bill can attest to that, along with the Corgi Nationals. So do join us at the Great Race Place this weekend.
Well, if you ask some people, the most impressive horse 3-year-old wise on Preakness Day was not necessarily the winner journalism, but how about Crudo? who won the Sir Barton Stakes in a very impressive effort. And we're pleased to be joined now on the Gainesway Guest of the Week segment of the show by one of his owners, Bobby Flay. And Bobby, before we get into the nuts and bolts of this horse and that race, maybe we can break some news here. Are you going to the Belmont?
I don't make those choices. One of the things I learned a long time ago is I let the people who really know what they're doing make those decisions. So that's in Todd Pletcher we trust. I don't, honestly, I've heard some rumblings about that as a possibility. I don't personally. I think it might be a little early for that horse, but he showed some talent, that's for sure. And so you have to start thinking about things like that. But it's a long summer, and there's so many great races, during the summer. And it's I think that we all, when we get excited about something that might be, let's call it better than the usual, you can't wait to see it happen again. And I think sometimes you make decisions that might be a little too quick. But who knows? I don't listen. If Todd calls me up and says, I want to run in the Belmont Stakes, that's where the horse is going.
Talk about a horse that's perfectly named to be owned by a chef. My wife and daughter are huge Hamachi Crudo fans with the little citrus sauce. And when I heard Crudo, I thought, then I saw the owner. Okay, that makes sense. But understand that has been a little bit of a roundabout way that you still have him and you're racing him after purchasing him as a yearling. Tell us about that. So
Tom McGreevy, who has picked out some of the great horses of our generation, one of them being one of my favorite fillies to watch run, Songbird, has been helping me, and it was sort of my first season with Tom. Unfortunately, my bloodstock agent James Delhook passed away suddenly over in the UK a handful of years ago, and Tom was nice enough to kind of help me out. And I don't really buy colts. I don't race colts as a rule, so to speak, unless I get somehow stuck with them, so to speak. I breed a lot, and they're always for sale. And so I don't really play that game. But in this case, I'm not really sure why, but I decided I wanted to pinhook a few horses. What happens when you go to these sales? Like all of a sudden you start getting creative. A lot of time in between waiting for your horses to come through the ring. So a couple of bourbons later, let's pinhook some horses. So, sire power is very important to me. Justify had just started showing that he was going to have talent outside of his racing record as a sire. And, Tom said, I love this horse's walk. It was a wheeling. And I paid $350,000. He was the most expensive Justify wheeling that season that went through the ring. And I said, okay. And then Justify became even more successful over the next handful of months as a sire. He was winning in Europe. He was winning in the US. I was like, wow, we're going to ring the bell here. And we took him to the Saratoga sale, which is my, one of my favorite sales. And nobody looked at him. I mean, honestly, it was unbelievable. And this is the thing that we all know, which is so funny and crazy, which is that, we have a lot of experts in this field. And, everybody said, oh, he's too short-legged, and he didn't look short-legged the other day. But, it's just one of those things you just don't know. And he wasn't matching up, I guess, physically with some of the amazing physicals in a sale like Saratoga. There's a couple hundred horses. They're all incredibly beautiful. So, I mean, I saw Baffert in the lobby at the Four Seasons the other day, in Baltimore. And, obviously he's rooting for Justify as a sire. And he's like, we need a good Justified dirt horse. And I was like, yeah, well, I might actually have one. And it's like, yeah, I heard about this horse. I was like, I said, I distinctly remember you walking right by him at Saratoga and not looking at him. So anyway, we took him to the 2-year-old sale. We scratched him there too. He didn't have any interest. And I just said, okay, well, only one thing left to do. Let's put some colors on him. And he started working with Todd. And one of the things I like a lot of things about Todd Pletcher. He's an amazing horseman. He's a great guy. He's so professional. It's all the things that you hear about Todd is beyond true. And he always lets you know where you are with what you have. And I think that that's invaluable. And he told me right off the bat, he's like, this horse is not big, but he doesn't train small. And I went to Palm Beach Downs a couple of times to watch the horse work. And the thing that I realized, listen, I don't know what I'm looking at really, but I know a significant gallop out when I see it like anybody else. I was just like, God, this horse just seems to like get better as the furlongs click off. And I think we saw a little bit of that the other day. They were not going slow. It was 23-46 and they were on his back. And when he turned for home, he just kicked away. And if you watch the gallop out, he galloped out by 20. It was crazy. And there was a couple of very good horses in that race. The Invictus, they paid $1.2 million for him. And obviously Well Bred had some fast numbers in his last race. That's why he was 3-5. But listen, on every day is a different day. But on Saturday, he showed that he had some talent. It was really nice to watch.
Well, Bobby, he was pretty amazing on Saturday, winning by 7 lengths. And I can attest that he has grown because I did look at him with Lynn Hancock at the Stone Farm consignment in Saratoga. I did also look at Journalism, who sold at the same sale for $825,000. So he's definitely grown up a lot, and I'm glad to see him doing good things. We were watching a little bit of the telecast for NBC and watch you being interviewed afterwards. And we're going to talk about this as well, the Triple Crown spacing. You were there, you witnessed it. What are your thoughts? I couldn't hear it because everything was going on. But what are your thoughts with the Triple Crown and the spacing? Because you're going to be preaching to the choir here for all of us.
Look, I love the traditions of this sport. It's one of the things I love about it. And that's why when you see me at a racetrack, I am dressed up because I feel like the sport and the horses and all the people around it deserve that respect. That's just me. Now, I have some friends of mine who are like, I'm not putting a jacket on. I'm like, well, you're not sitting with me then. but I like the tradition of horse racing. I think there's something about it beyond just, how fast are the horses and can you cash a bet? I just love the whole sort of pageantry of it all. So, but in this case, I would like to defect from tradition, and this is not a new concept, but first Saturday of those 3 months to me is the move. And I know that there's a lot of pushback from NYRA about schedule and this and that. And my feeling is really that nothing else matters as much than the Triple Crown. It's not even close. It's 50 lengths back to the most important race after that. And we need to take care of the Triple Crown if we want people to pay attention to the sport beyond the people that actually already pay attention to the sport. And that's always been my goal. When I was on the board of directors of the Breeders' Cup, when I was on the board of directors of NYRA at the same time, it was always my goal to not so much please the people already in the game. We were, of course, trying to do that as well. But I wanted other people to kind of take notice of it because we already have the people that love horse racing. Let's face it, they're going to love horse racing for probably their whole life. It's just one of those things that gets in you and it's hard to shake it. But, as somebody who pays a lot of attention to marketing, hospitality, and sort of, events, so to speak, where people enjoy themselves, I want people to get tied on to the Triple Crown for as long as possible. So instead of it being a 5-week thing, why not make it something that's kind of goes for a lot of the summer? And if they have to push back some races at Saratoga, so be it. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And so I don't accept that excuse. I think that we have to take care of the Triple Crown and everybody needs to get together and make it happen. If you can't run in 4 weeks, then you can't run in 4 weeks. But I think that 4 weeks is a fair. I just think that we'll have so many more horses lining up for the Preakness. And let's face it, the Preakness probably gets talked about the least of the three, right? The Derby is the Derby. And then Belmont it's a New York race. It's the Belmont Stakes, the Test of Champions, all those things. But the Preakness is incredibly important because if somehow the Kentucky Derby winner, as you know, can win the Preakness, man, we have everybody paying attention. Doesn't even matter if they actually win the Triple Crown. The fact that they are attempting the Triple Crown is a big deal for us because we're just going to get that many more eyeballs, and people they pay attention, for that longer period of time. So, first Saturday of May, first Saturday of June, first Saturday of July. I mean, just, a July 4th Belmont Stakes going for the Triple Crown. I mean, what a party that would be.
I mean, what I've always thought, Bobby, is that what made the Triple Crown what it are the rivalries that began in the Kentucky Derby and then continued on to the Preakness and captured the imagination of the public. To me, the way I look at it now, if we get another affirmed in Aladar probably skips the Preakness and waits for the Belmont.
That's right.
Easy Goer, Sunday Silence. Ali Sheba bet twice. I mean, those are the rivalries that really captured the attention of the people that you pointed out, right? The people that aren't in the business, that are the ancillary sports fans that we're not getting now.
Yeah. Randy, everybody has opinions about what's right and wrong, and we'll never always agree as to what it is. But I focus in on very few things when people ask me my opinions. Really, I just want to have a good time, in the horse business. But when people ask my opinions, obviously I have lots of thoughts on lots of things, but the things that I really talk about are the 3-year-olds, and mainly the 3-year-old colts, because that's the thing that people pay attention to. And you guys on NBC spend untold millions of dollars marketing these 3-year-olds that we've never heard of before, starting with all the preps into the Triple Crown races, and then the post-Triple Crown races, like the Travers and the Haskell and all that. I suggested, there was a lot of controversy about this suggestion when I was on the board of directors of Breeders' Cup. I suggested another race. You might recall this.
3-year-olds, right.
I said, let's have the Breeders' Cup Derby at the end.
Right. And
I said, and it was, I got a lot of pushback from people who have been sort of in the Breeders' Cup world for a long time because it was almost like I was insulting the classic. And I think that the Breeders' Cup has a great opportunity to utilize all the marketing that NBC and of course, Fox now is the Belmont, that all these networks have been spending all this time, energy, and money promoting the names of these 3-year-olds that we all know their names. And people that don't actually follow horse racing, those are the horses they know. They don't know the older horses. They might have known them last year for a minute, but now they don't really know them. And so, I mean, I'm sure there's like White Barrio is a good horse, but I'm sure a lot of people that don't follow horse racing are talking about him. They're talking about sovereignty. They're talking about journalism. That race was spectacular on Saturday. I mean, what a performance. And, we have an opportunity to really sort of cash in terms of getting eyeballs to these horses that have the spotlight on them. Why kind of just give it away at the end? That's my feeling. And that's the only thing I really sort of opine on in terms of, how we can think about the schedule a slightly bit differently that would really be effective. That's it. The other thing, Randy, I wanted to say to you, I love when you're on NBC. You give people great information. It's a balance for you guys, right? I'm sure you guys discuss this all the time in your pre-production meetings, which is how do we keep the casual viewer interested, but then also talk about, the quarter and 46 and change, right? Where those people are not going to understand that. But one of the things I think that people are really interested in is how much people pay for the horses. And you always have that information at your fingertips, which I love. And it's one of the things, it's like whenever I do like an article for like a money magazine or like Forbes or something like that, they always want numbers because people are interested in what things cost.
Yeah.
Yep, they are.
And so when you say, oh, he paid $1.2 million for this horse as a yearling, he really, they went all out at the sale, Or this horse in the Kentucky Derby cost $2,500. People love this because like they know the lure of like people spending lots of money and somebody getting lucky, but like it's, you know, all the things in between. I just want to commend you because I think those are great things to talk about that keeps the viewer that doesn't really necessarily know what a quarter mile should be run in, but they know what a dollar amount is and what I think it's very cool. And you can watch a $2,500 horse run against, you know, a $5 million yearling. You know, it's great.
Well, thanks for saying that. And then when the $2,500 horse beats the $1.2 million yearling, then people are like, "Holy cow!"
Exactly, I can do this too.
Right.
Exactly, I love that.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. I've just got like a couple more questions. First of all, thank you for wearing the hat because we know that Bill absolutely loves the New York Yankees. Where are you? What are you working on right now?
Right this very second?
Well, I don't know.
In general, I mean, I obviously I've been on the Food Network for 30 years, so there's always constant production happening there. I have a bunch of shows on the Food Network. I just completed my 18th cookbook, so that's out. It's called Chapter 1, ironically. And then let's see, what else am I up to? I'm in Atlanta right now. We're shooting an episode of Family Feud for one of my cooking shows. It's sort of like two kind of chefs going at it. So that's kind of fun to do. Stuff like that. But then listen, I got a lot of my shooting done in the first quarter, so I can go to some of these fun races. I was just in New York, actually.
Oh, lovely. Oh, tell us about Go-Go Boots.
Go-Go Boots, yeah. She's a filly that I bought at a breeze up sale in France. Okay, this is like one of those stories. I never pick my own horses, ever, right? I mean, I know a lot about pedigrees, but from a physical standpoint, that's when I bring in somebody who actually knows what they're looking at. But, I was in my country house last August during the breeze up sale in Arcana in France. And, it was probably early afternoon or something. And it was summer. So I think, we broke out the rosé early. And I was like, maybe I'm going to buy a horse today. And I started watching the breezes on the videos. And as I said before, I really love Sire Power. And this horse is by Night of Thunder, who's one of Dubawi's best sons. And he's winning lots of races in Europe. And I watched the breeze. I thought the breeze looked good. I'm not sure if it did or didn't, but I thought it did at that moment. I had the horse vetted, and then I bought her, and she turned out to be like one of John Gosden's best 3-year-old fillies this year. I mean,
that's awesome.
Honestly, complete luck. I'm complete luck.
Oh, where's she headed?
Sorry?
Where's she headed now?
It's a good question. She's got an Oaks entry. She ran third in the Grade 3, which is the race at York. The Grade 3 at York from last week is a trial for the Oaks. So she's got an Oaks entry, so it's either going to be the Oaks or most probably the Ribblesdale at Royal Ascot. By the way, either one of those, like I always say, like winning is, I don't even think about winning. Participating in races like this is everything for me. It's fantastic.
Great name. Great name.
For people that might stumble upon this on YouTube, let's say, Bobby, that don't know anything about horse racing, they're like, hey, there's Bobby Flay. Give people an idea of the extent of your involvement in the sport. Like how many horses in training, how many brood mares?
That's a good question. That's unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that. That's probably a bad sign. But I think, first of all, I've been doing this for a long time. And a lot of people see me and they're like, oh, he probably just kind of got in this last year or something like that. But I have the story that many people have, which is, my grandfather took me to Saratoga when I was 15 years old. And I was like, what is this world? And I've been going there ever since. And then after I actually went to work to make a living, I started dabbling in, taking a piece of a horse here and there. And then I decided at some point I really wanted to do it myself. I have, at this point, I probably have like eight brood mares in Europe and maybe the same amount in Kentucky with Stone Farm. So I have about, I don't know, 15, 16 mares or something like that. And as you know, that multiplies your numbers. Right now you have yearlings, weanlings, and the mares, right? So it's like, it's a lot. And I love going to the sales. I love selling horses. I love raising the horses. I think it's a spectacular thing. To me, I'm even more interested in the breeding part of it than the racing part of it, only because it's so wonderful to see these families develop over time. I mean, and then my daughter can breed out of the same families, and hopefully her children will breed out of things that I started many, many years ago. It's an amazing thing to be a part of. And the great thing about breeding for me is I can sell a horse. Like I sold a horse to somebody who, and the horse ran last week. And they pay you for the horse, and you can root for the horse because you have the family, you have the mom, you have the sisters, you have the brother. So it's actually a very wonderful way to participate.
All right. Well, we want to, despite wearing the New York Yankee hat, we're very pleased that Bobby Flay was able to spend some time with us today on the TDN Writers Room podcast. Bobby, thanks so much. I don't know how you do it. I think there's 5 of you because you're in so many 800 different shows and here and there. But we really appreciate you coming on today. And let's go Red Sox.
Yes, exactly. I'll see you at Yankee Stadium.
Okay.
Our Guest of the Week segment is brought to you by Gainesway, home of Charge It. You remember Charge It's signature victory. I think you should. That astounding 23-length romp in the Dwyer Stakes, which earned Charge It a Beyer speed figure of 111, the highest of his career. But Charge It also topped 100 on the Beyer scale on 3 other occasions, with his 106 in his Suburban win, tying for the fastest Beyer at 1.25 miles in 2023. Charge It is a son of Tappet, and he stands at Gainesway for $12,500. Gainesway, power, passion, performance.
Charge It is pouring it on, winning the Dwyer by the length of the stretch. Charge It wins it convincingly in this Grade 2 Suburban.
Be a smarter better with First TV, the best horses. With thousands of exclusive morning workouts. All at your fingertips and delivered right into your inbox. Everything you need to be informed. Be smart. Bet smart. With First TV.
It is now time for the first TV work of the week as we take a look at Baeza. He was third in the Kentucky Derby on May the 3rd at Churchill Downs by less than 2 lengths to Sovereignty. He returned to the work tab on Friday with a very easy half-mile drill for trainer John Sheriffs. He was also actually joined on the tab by fellow 3-year-old Barnes, who worked for the first time since finishing the last of 5 in the Grade 1 Santa Anita Derby. Baeza was credited with a 4-furlong work in 53-3. Don't worry about the time. John does crazy things like that all the time. He might work in 111 next week. He started to start in the Belmont Stakes on June the 7th. Baeza's half-brother Dornock won last year's Belmont Stakes, contested like this year at 1.25 miles in Saratoga.
All right, let's talk about Pimlico. This was the last Preakness ever to be run at Pimlico. And some people were actually, my feeling on it is good riddance. You should have closed the place down 35 years ago. And, it was an eyesore. But a lot of people were, sentimental and nostalgic. I mean, this is where they had the great match race with Seabiscuit, where you had so many wonderful, memorable Preaknesses. It's the new Pimlico is going to be in the same spot, same footprint. And if ever a racetrack in this country needed to be rebuilt, it's Pimlico. So I say good riddance to the dump.
How was your trek to the press box, Randy?
You mean the 2,000 stairs because the elevator has been out of order for 2 years. Yeah, I made one more trip to the press box for old time's sake and videoed it. It's the best place in the whole dump as far as I'm concerned. But anyway. What do you think, Zoe?
It'll be a whole different thing at Laurel next year. I have no idea how it's going to work because it is a much smaller facility. I don't know. I'm wishing them the best of luck with it. But it was a little bit nostalgic being at Pimlico, knowing, this is the end of an era, but they're still going to have a racetrack in the same place. It's still good. They're not moving the racetrack, and they're just making it better.
Right.
So, you can say goodbye to it, but it's not going anywhere.
It was starting to irritate me a little bit, to be honest with you. The last Preakness at Pimlico. No, it's not. It's Pimlico's going to be there. The racetrack's going to be there. The horses are going to be running there on the same site. It's a freaking building, for crying out loud, and it's a dump. It's not like Fenway Park or Wrigley Field or Lambeau Field or any of these places that have been, or Saratoga or Monmouth or Santa Anita. These places that are old but have been properly cared for and have been treated with kindness and respect and upgraded. And oh my God, no. I mean, this place needs to go, and it's going to be a brand new place, and it's going to be better. It's not the last Preakness at Pimlico.
It's going to be awesome.
Well, some sad news in horse racing this week as we learned that just this week, Larry Demerit passed away. His story last year in the Triple Crown and the Kentucky Derby was one of those memorable stories that horse racing is so good at producing. He came from the Bahamas, came to the United States to be a horse trainer. He won his races here and there, but never got close to having a good horse. And at the same time, he also, starting in 1996, so we're talking 31 years ago, was first diagnosed with a form of blood cancer. So he battled that off and on for 31 years. And Zoe, I know you knew him really well, but I was watching a lot of YouTube clips and everything to prepare for this, to talk about him today. I didn't know the gentleman at all, but he was never not smiling. He's the cutest smile with that gap in his teeth. And you could tell, you don't have to know the guy to know that he's a sweetheart. So
Larry,
I'm sure he'll be missed.
Larry was infectious. He was just the most gregarious, infectious kind of human you'd ever want to meet. His laugh, his smile. I first met him in 1996. We shared a barn down at Keeneland on Rice Road. That was when nobody wanted to be down in the ABCs down there. Now you can't buy your way in that spot. Godolphin's taken it over. So I shared a barn with him. I was working for Chris Speckett, and he was on the backside of us. And just a great guy. Bahamian, first Bahamian to run a horse in the Kentucky Derby. We were all so happy last year when West Saratoga got to the Derby, because that was always his dream. Always he would talk about the Kentucky Derby. I've known him since 96, and he's had cancer and defied the odds throughout. He loved God, horses, and women. He's survived by his wife, Inga. He always came up to me with a smile on his face. His first wife, sadly, died of cancer a good few years ago as well. So he survived a lot and always had faith, which is something that I always found remarkable because, I would have been looking up to the heavens and been like, Jesus Christ, again? Like you beat it once, he beat it twice, he beat it 3 times. Like, what does this poor guy have to do? I'd have been praying to a different kind of God because for 30 years he battled it. He was just an amazing human being. And there's not one person, I think, that ever met Larry that would say he was a bad guy. That smile, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. I didn't know him well at all, but I came by the barn a few times last year with West Saratoga. And really all you need to know about him is that he was obviously so excited about having a horse in the Kentucky Derby, and he wasn't going to miss it for anything. And at the same time, West Saratoga was running in the Derby, Larry was going through chemotherapy. And he would come to the track and be absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
And he had a lounge chair where he could lay down just outside of the shed row. And he could make it about halfway through the morning. And then he had to lay down and rest his body. And he was laying there at the barn. And everybody that came into the barn was greeted with a smile and that laugh, even when he was laying in his chair, just exhausted because of his chemo. That's the kind of guy he was. It was really cool.
He was determined to get back to the Derby again. He's got a very nice 2-year-old that ran second on Derby Day. My good friend Moret actually bought him a horse in January for $1,000. And he said that was going to be his next Derby horse. He said one other thing. He said, God forbid I go to heaven where there's no horses. So let's hope he's in a heaven with plenty of horses.
Very good.
And the TDN Writers Room is brought to you by West Point Thoroughbreds. Congratulations to Terry Finley and West Point Partners for not only Sandman's performance in the Preakness, he bounced back with a solid third-place finish, but also that dominant victory by Reagan's Wit in the James W. Murphy Stakes 2 races before the Preakness. Sandman and Reagan's Wit are now being pointed for stakes appearances at Saratoga this summer, which should be exciting. In the meantime, West Point has been active at the Fasig-Tipton Mid-Atlantic sale of 2-year-olds in training. You can see all the stable's latest additions at www.westpointtb.com.
All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
That's a wrap on this week's show, a Preakness follow-up. I want to thank my guest, Bobby Flay, the Gainesway Guest of the Week, along with my partner, Zoe Cabin, Randy Moss, and the people who work behind the scenes to make this show all go, the producers and directors, Sue Finley, Katie Petruniak, Anthony LaRocca, and Aaliyah LaRocca. Well, 2.5 weeks to go to the Belmont Stakes. Can't wait. We'll talk to you next week.